All right, those of you joining us over recording, welcome back to Off's Spring Quarter. It's really nice to see you back here, and I can't wait for what we have in store for you for spring. All right, so previously on Offs, we've covered 10 lectures on various topics, and they're all available to you at this link, tinyurl.com, Off's lecture number. And this is lecture 11, contrary to what it says on the slide. So today we're going to have mainly a lot of announcements for spring quarter and your capstone, your deposits, and to give you a little hint about what to expect in spring quarter. And then we'll also release the HC05 project, which will be the wireless communication, serial communication project for this quarter. All right, so this is new quarter, so we have new lab hours. So as always, feel free to navigate to ieeebruins.com/lab or something like that to check our lab hours, or you can use our amazing bot on the Discord, do .lab hours name, so .lab hours tailored to see my lab hours. And this quarter, if you haven't heard Caleb talk about it, we're gonna have ops hours. So if you see in the chart over here, all the squares or the rectangles colored in with what is it, green, or ops hours. So those are the hours dedicated to help you with debugging questions or just help you guys socialize as well. So we're hoping to have more of you just chill in the lab with your fellow ops members and get to know each other more, as this is our last quarter together. And very important, we have officer board applications. So the applications for admin board positions are due at the end of week 3. So yeah, it's due by the Saturday of week 3. So if you're running for anything like secretary, events coord, publicity, that'll be you, end of week 3. And then the application for project for application is due at the end of week 4. So that'll be if you're interested in becoming the next ops leads. If you are interested, please talk to us. This is the right time to talk to us. We won't ask hard questions. We'll just like to know, if you're running, we're happy for you. We'd like to know. So I've also linked to election documentation and the link for registering to vote for the IEEE elections. Now, Ryder's going to talk about the capstone.
Yes, the capstone. So, as Taylor mentioned, we're going to release a project today. But once you're all done with that project, all that's left for this year is going to be the capstone. So it's going to take up a bulk of this quarter. You can see some of the deadlines here. So we're going to break it into 2 parts. So there's going to be a half deadline because we want to make sure you guys are on track, because this isn't one of those projects you can do in the last couple days before it's due. So we're going to have a half deadline, check you off, and then a final competition when it's finally due. At this competition, we're going to have different categories. We're going to really make it open-ended so you can make it a lot of different ways. And there will be some pretty cool prizes for those who win these competitions.
Yes, prizes.
Yes, prizes. So here's some of the deadlines for the rest of this quarter.
We actually have pretty cool prizes in store for you. And if you have any ideas for what kind of prizes if you would like to see, we still have room for suggestions as well. So feel free to type in the chat or let us know at any point. Imagine like requesting something and actually getting that prize. That's basically free money right there. Okay, now we're going to talk about the project. So this project is going to be wireless communication. So we're going to be using this HC05 module to talk to your Arduino over Bluetooth. All right, so what's going to happen is we're going to have an LED connected to your Arduino, which is going to be controlled by your laptop eventually. So your laptop is going to send the H205 some bytes or data over Bluetooth, which is then going to send the same data over to your Arduino by Uart. And then we're going to use that information to control the brightness of the LED.
All right, so now we're going to do a little bit of review on UART. We actually covered this in one of our lectures last quarter. So if you're interested more, you can go back. We could go a little bit more in depth in that one, but here we're going to talk specifically about UART and how it applies to this project. So this is how Arduino communicates with its serial communication. Okay, so whenever it communicates with your laptop to print out something, it's using UART. And when we're going to be using this HC05, it's going to have to use UART. It's asynchronous. So what the main sort of problem with this is that, or not problem, but what has to happen is you need start and stop bits to indicate whenever you're getting new data. So synchronous uses a time signal. We don't have that, so we need start and stop bits. Physically, how this is going to look is on your Arduino, you have TX and RX pins, which are pin 0 and pin 1. The RX always connects to the TX and vice versa. The HC05 has a corresponding TX and RX. That's how they connect, and they need to share a common ground. Also, very important that they need to have the same baud rate. If they don't, then the data you get is going to be read at a different rate than it's coming in, and you're going to get a mixed up signal. Okay, a little bit more. So data sent in packets, right? We talked a little bit about the asynchronicity. So what that means is we need a start bit at the beginning of the packet and then a stop bit. And then usually there's a parity bit. This is really just to check for error. It makes sure that the data that's coming in is a real signal. It's an easy way of checking to see if there's some error already. So yeah, it sends out the packet bit by bit in the form of like voltage pulses or current pulses. The receiver then reads this bit by bit at the same rate that it's coming in. That's the baud rate. It converts the data back to parallel, removes the now unnecessary stop bits because those weren't really part of the data, but really just to tell the receiver when to start reading, and then it has the data used. Okay, what you're going to be using though, when you use UART, we have two functions. So serial.write is how we send out data. So we're going to serial.write. Some information you can send out an int, a char, anything like that. Serial.read, what that does is returns the data that's coming in. So pretty simple, not too complicated so far.
And here's a quick example of what that might look like when you're using two Arduinos and talking to, when you have two Arduinos talking to each other over TX and RX. So if you can see over here, we have the RX of one Arduino connected to the TX of the other Arduino and TX to the RX. And then we have the common ground. And then over here, if you remember from our Valentine's Day lecture, we remember to begin our serial communication and specify the baud rate. We wait for available bytes in the buffer, and then we echo back the byte we read from serial communication. Pretty straightforward. This is the same logic you're going to be using in your project.
All right, so now specifically about the HC05. So this should have all came in your guys's parts package that we sent out. It has 6 pins on it, but we will only use 4. So we're going to use 4 for this project and then the same 4 for Capstone. Unlike the ICs that you had to use in the piano project, these are not cheap. They are very expensive, so please be very careful. If you're unsure at all of something, double check or ask someone. You know, don't put the same pins on the same row because then you're going to short it all and then a lot of bad stuff's going to happen. And then we have a couple questions for you guys. So the first one is a poll question, I believe. What we are wondering is how would you connect some of these pins to the Arduino? So the 4 we're going to be using, we're only asking you, the 4 that we'll be using are the middle 4. So we won't use state and end. And right now we're wondering where would we connect the HC05TX pin and its RX pin.
All right, I'm seeing some good answers. I'll give you 5 more seconds. All right. Here we go. So y'all got it right. So we want to connect the TX pin on the H205 to the RX pin on the Arduino, and the RX pin on your H255 to the TX pin in on the Arduino. But there's a caveat to this. What could possibly go wrong? And feel free to type any guesses in the chat. I'll be very impressed if you come up with an answer right away. But as you think, I'm going to start giving you some hints. So the first hint is that giant red square. Yes, that is a good guess. Why would it break? Giant red square. So, mm-hmm. Any more guesses? Yes, Ryder, would you like to explain?
So I think a lot of you guys were on the right track. So when we connect to the Arduino pins, they have a max voltage of 5 volts, and we don't want that. Oh, yeah, so we don't want that. As you can see on the H05, it says it requires 3.3 volts. So we have to find a way to make sure that 5 volts doesn't get disconnected. Does anyone know a way how we would do that?
So basically, Arduino pins operate on 5 volt logic levels, which means if you do a high output on the Arduino, you get 5 volts. But that's too much for the HC05 over here. Receiving 5 volts on its RX pin could possibly damage the module.
Close.
Yes,
That's
close.
close, Ava.
Yes, sir.
That's some resistor. Yeah. So I think what Ava was onto was a voltage divider. So we're going to do a voltage divider, which will help us bring the voltage down to 3.3 volts. And I think earlier Jack said something about ground. So yes, we do need to connect ground and VCC for this to work, but specifically for connecting the RX and the TX, we need to limit it to be 3.3 volts. So that's what we meant by this question, is because it comes in at high at 5 volts, we need a voltage divider to bring it down to 3.3.
And notice we only need the voltage divider for Arduino TX connected to this module RX, because this module will send 3.3 volts logic level via its TX pins, and that's enough for the Arduino to detect it as a high. So the Arduino RX pin and the HC05 TX pin pair will be fine. And notice also it says power 3.6 volts to 6 volts. So you will be using the 5 volts pin on the Arduino to power the module. And then the pin labeled EN, that stands for enable. We're not going to connect it to anything unless you're trying to type in some AT commands, which will only happen if something breaks, and you'll know. All right, next up, processing is an IDE that you can use in this project to build a visual interface. So in this project, you basically need to have a way to control the LED using 3 different states. And we ask you to build an interface so that you can send this information, send some bytes over the Bluetooth port to the H205, which will then go into the Arduino to control the LED. So processing is a great way to do it, and probably the easiest way to do it is basically just Java with some cool useful libraries, and it makes it really easy to make shapes and handle events, read and write from or to serial ports. If you take a look in the spec, we also have some starter code for you there as well. Yeah, so that's processing IDE. If you do want to experiment with using the raw terminal to screen your serial ports, you can come to my lab hours and I'll be happy to walk you all through that process as well. It's really cool because you can either use the raw terminal, you can even like build your own program if you're into C-level programming, and to talk to your Bluetooth port.
Okay, so this project is going to be due in almost 2 weeks, the Friday that is next week, at 6 p.m. Let's get that done. Don't wait till the last minute. This one is a pretty tough one, I'd say. So get started early. Please come early if you have questions on any of this. We have some details in the spec about what it needs to function, how it needs to function when you're finally ready to get checked off. But you're going to demo it when you're all done. Please ask us questions. Then one last plug for officer applications. If you're interested for running to any of them, you could reach out to any of the current officers if you have questions, but especially if you're interested in running for ops lead, please let us know.
And I'm gonna make a correction about that. Actually, it's not talk to us if you're running for ops. If you ops lead, talk to us if you're, you know, if you have the tiniest idea that you might be interested in running for ops lead, do talk to us. And then for any other positions, if for some reason the current officers are intimidating or something, I'll be here to help you out with that. So yeah, you can get checked off starting Monday. We'll be waiting to see y'all in our lab hours and ops hours. And now I'm gonna stop the recording. Bye those on recording.